in part an energy update. On the other side of it, a deep dive, a personal deep dive. So, it's Venus Cazimi. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Astrology, most definitely not my area of expertise. But Venus Cazimi is the Sun and Venus coming into this exact union, and at this stage we've got Venus in retrograde until early September. So Venus is retrograde for 6 weeks, and we're at the halfway point of Venus being in retrograde. So I suppose in the short term, gonna really look at and get us to reflect on where we've been with regards to love, desires, intimacy, all of that stuff. I'm going to say in the medium term, guiding us, because this is, from what I can gather, it's like these 8-year cycles. So guiding us to reflect on this time 8 years ago. But I guess on a longer term, we can go back a few 8-year cycles. And this is what's taken place for me today. I mean, it's literally put me to bed. It's put me to bed. And I thought, I have to get out. I've basically been in bed for most of the day. It hardly ever happens. Once I'm up. And I'm raring to go. And had some beautiful channelings this morning, and interestingly, what I was guided to was vibrating at 741 hertz, 741 hertz. This being in terms of frequency, that I will personally shift into, and that is very much the frequency of the throat chakra, our truth. But ensuring that, I suppose, if you're vibrating at that frequency, then that which is not for you, the energy that is within the walls of the separation, within that throat chakra, that of anger and rage. And what often does anger and rage stem from? Jealousy, envy, lower vibrational energy. Do you know what? We're in this human plane, so I was going to say, dare I say hatred? No, I'm saying hatred. And a lot of the time when these energies are directed at us, especially if we are looking at personal, intimate relationships, it's because that person very often has such deep, unhealed wounds that are there. And I suppose, like, where am I going with this? One of the things that has come up has been domestic violence, domestic abuse, domestic violence. And it's funny, nothing's funny at all, actually, but there's so much that I've been so open with within my own spiritual journey, my spiritual practice. And it's not that I haven't been open about domestic violence, but one thing that I do know is, it's so, sorry, trigger warning. It's not that I haven't been open about it, but it's just something like, it's really interesting actually, because you get to, when you've encountered and experienced domestic violence, especially when you have a family and you do the bravest things that you could have ever done and got out of it, many of us don't actually go through counselling to look at the damage it's caused. There's the physical damage, there's emotional, there's mental damage, and the emotional and mental damage is much more long lasting, but it really leaves a deep-seated imprint on our DNA. And one of the things that that I've spoken about to other healers in the past is this being like definitely a psychic attack on many of us healers. Some of the absolute best healers I know have endured really horrific domestic abuse in the past before getting to where they are today, and it really has such a deep impact. And then we can go years. And it's interesting actually, because I read a book, I highly recommend it for anyone who feels that they're not at that point that they will be triggered into healing crisis. And it's a novel, and it's called It Ends With Us, and it's by Colleen Hoover. And then there's a follow-up called It Starts With Us. And It Ends With Us is the girl being in the relationship, this domestically violent relationship, but also being a child of and witnessing domestic violence between her parents. And then the second one, It Starts With Us, is her entering into the relationship that she probably should have always been in. God. And that's the bits that resonate. Because if we really go back, those of us who have been in domestically abusive relationships, can we go back and be like, that's actually the relationship I should have been in? And then whoever this person is sweeps in. And it's very often that the person is not even charming. They're not even charming, and they show themselves for who and what they are quite early. But just really interesting reading through, especially the second book, where she's out of it and she's beginning to rebuild her life and has this strength, yet the way we still act a certain way to ensure that we don't trigger that violent response within that person, the way that we still continue to remain cordial and even nice to these people and still give them second chances. So one of the reasons this has come up for me is because good old Facebook memories. And a Facebook memory came up today saying, and it was from 12 years ago. This is probably the first time I'm even disclosing this. But I need to, because we bypass so much and we get on with it. And that memory, and to be honest with you, I suppose it's one of my core traumatic memories that I've just washed over, because at the time it happened, I pretended in a sense that it didn't happen how it happened, didn't let anybody know for years. And basically 12 years ago, I had to go to hospital because my ring finger was broken. And I said something about, I broke my ring finger, and how good the hospital was at looking after me and how I was in and out of there so quickly. And I remember that hospital visit. I got passed from doctor to nurse and asked so many times, what happened to you? And this finger can still feel the bone, and it's never, my ring finger, left hand as well, my wedding finger, it's never, or wedding ring finger, it's never been the same since. Never looked the same. I can see the difference between them. And I was asked so many times, and each time I just said, I kind of just like walked into the door funny, and it broke, and they knew I was lying, and I knew that they knew I was lying. And what had happened was the baby's pram was picked up, and it was whacked against the whole left side of my body, because if they'd made me take off my clothes, they would have seen me bruised all down the left side of my body. And in that process, my ring finger was broken. Hit against the left side, the feminine, the ring finger, love. marriage, relationships, intimacy, all of that. All of that stuff was already broken. And yeah, I fell against the floor, and then I went to hospital and I lied about it, and family who I called to look after the kids while I'd done that, lied to them, just said I walked into the door funny. Didn't let anybody know. Didn't let anyone know. And a big part of the not letting anyone know is embarrassment and shame that holds in the sacral. And I believe, and maybe this is the point I'm getting to, I'm very much just, this isn't even a channeling really, it's a me processing. It definitely is a me just processing. So I think potentially what can occur during this cycle and in the coming days, weeks, months, and possibly even years ahead is us really looking into this as such a deep sacred healing of the sacral chakra, at the things where we keep our mouths shut because we're embarrassed, we're ashamed, we feel shame at what we have allowed to carry on, at the fact that we have covered up the wrongdoing of another. Partly because of the fear. In my case, it was shame. It was shame. I was fucking embarrassed. I was embarrassed because that Sonia that everybody sees, who's lively and, do you know what I'll say? I'll say how I am, lively and full of love and happy. That's me. That's my natural essence. And somehow I managed to continue to hold on to my natural essence through all of those years. I don't know how, but I did. And there has to, during these years, there has to be this really deep healing of the sacral, of those walls of separation that are holding the shame, the guilt even. And I think a big part of this is because it is blocking us to really, it's blocking here, it's blocking the throat. Actually, as I put myself to bed earlier on, I kind of had this sore throat, which as soon as I lay down disappeared. This sore throat just came on really quick, and I knew it was relating to the 741 hertz and the energy of truth and the healing that has to take place there. And for us to be able to really step up and step into our truth, and recognise that this has impacted how we then put ourselves in relationships, in our future relationships. How are we showing up? How are we showing up? Are we out there trying to prove ourselves? Are we out there with barriers around the heart because we are scared to trust? We're not sure if anyone can hold us. What is it that we need more than anything? And I think especially when I think about the healing community, the spiritual community, many of us do not have anybody to hold us. We are holding up so many people, whether it be our families, whether it be our definitely our clients, our community groups that we're running, our families, the earth. We are holding up so much. And there's not necessarily anyone out there to hold us up. And I feel like, and again, this is me being quite vulnerable, but very honest to say that whole there's no one there to hold me up has been one of the reasons that definitely for the past, I thought it was for the past year, and I've looked through my journals and we're getting on 2 years, this feeling of feeling so tired. How can we shift that feeling of soul tired, because if we continue working with this energy and myself even, that whole thing of feeling soul tired, and there is an essence of it where it is a reflection of the earth, it's a reflection of the collective feeling soul tired also. But how do we step into our truth if we really don't look at healing the distortion and the fragmentation that has been caused in the 1D storage kind of complex body area of shock and terror that domestic violence causes? A really massive part of the ascension process is the union of the masculine and the feminine in physical as well, not just, yes, within us, but also in physical form. We're not meant to be alone. We are meant to be like the power that will take place when we align with our divine masculine counterparts. It will be phenomenal, the healing that will occur to the world. But until we heal these deep wounds and realise the impact it's played on us, it's like it can't be. We have to step into our truth. And I suppose part of that as well was even being very, very clear on what it is that we need, that we want, but also not settling for any less. Not settling, full stop. Not settling, full stop. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Processing rather than channeling. And definitely the topic of DV, domestic abuse, it's something that we need to really begin healing. It's an assault on the feminine, and it's a big problem across all classes, all communities, all races, all religions. The violence, the terror to keep us disconnected from our true essence, from our souls, from greater love, from our absolute best life. Let's really get our heads together to figure out, actually, I was going to say, let's really bring a massive healing about, you know what, we need to figure this one out. That's what we have to do. Let's be real, we need to figure this one out. So how we start that process, how we start, whether it be healing circles or talking circles or I don't even know. But yeah, we need to come together and definitely figure this one out, because it is massive. Abundant love to everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Get out and walk in nature. Oh, I'm so fucking pleased I've done this, because I was feeling very dense. As soon as I stepped into the forest, the trees above me, the earth beneath me, it was just like, oh, I can breathe again. Much love to you all.